Today's episode is sponsored by Cheez-It Snapped. Cheez-It Snapped are the thin, crispy, cheesy snacks that take your lunch to the next level, making you question all your previous chip purchases. If you want to find out how Jess and I level up our lunch on set with the help of Cheez-It Snapped cheddar, sour cream, and onion, find out on the Cheez-It YouTube channel. The link is in the video description. Alright, so Cali-style burritos can take many shapes, but the most classic form starts with carne asada, the marinade for which starts with a quarter cup of vegetable oil and 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. Then we need the juice of 2 limes, preferably harvested as showboaty as possible, and additionally the juice of 3 oranges, and here's where your showboatiness can get you into trouble. Yes, I know that what I'm doing looks really cool and professional, but it's not, and while you think you might be impressing your significant other operating B-Chem, you're actually just wasting time. Once you got all them orange juices into the bowl, we're also adding 2 tablespoons of brown sugar, 2 teaspoons of ground cumin, quarter teaspoon cayenne pepper and a half teaspoon each Mexican oregano and paprika, and a healthy helping of fresh garlic, 4 cloves all told, 4 cloves lightly smashed with the wide side of a chef's knife. Then the most controversial ingredient, at least in my house, half a cup of packed cilantro leaves lightly chopped. Then we just need a solid tablespoon each kosher salt and freshly ground black pepper, and this guy's ready to be tiny whisked together and put to good use marinating our steak, specifically 2 pounds of flank, hanger, or skirt steak. I'm going with flank. No matter which steak you go with, we're treating it the same. We're starting by cutting off any excess fat from the exterior of the steak. If you got a flank steak, you might want to cut it in half lengthwise to make it into more mouth-appropriate sized pieces. Then we're slicing nice and thin across the grain. It's very important to slice across the grain, otherwise you're going to end up with long, chewy strips of beef inside your burrito. By keeping our muscle fibers nice and short, the beef is going to stay tender pretty much no matter how we cook it, especially once it's been marinated for at least 4 hours. Add all the steak to a bowl or zip top bag, pour the marinade over top. Make sure to spill just a little bit to remind yourself that you're human and you make mistakes, and that's okay. Press all the excess air out of the bag, zip it up tight, and toss this guy in the fridge for at least 4 hours and up to 24, massaging every few hours to ensure even distribution of the marinade. While this guy's chilling out, we can start talking sauces, of which there are many. First up, a super simple roasted tomatillo salsa, or Salsa Verde, for which we're obviously going to need some tomatillos, which are pretty easy to prep. We just got to pull off all this husky stuff off the outside and maybe give them a little rinse to remove any excess sticky residue. Once rinsed and patted dry, I'm going to start by cutting off the tough stem thing, chopping the tomatillos into halves or quarters, arranging them on a broiler-safe rimmed baking sheet, tossing them with a little bit of neutral flavored oil like vegetable or canola, and in addition to half a small onion that I'm going to cut into quarters, we're tossing these guys under the broiler for 3 to 5 minutes until they just start to pick up some color and blister and steam. Once they've cooled off for a few minutes, we're tossing them into the bowl of a blender, where we're going to combine it with 1 small jalapeno, stem removed and cut in half, the juice of 2 limes that we've hopefully cut a little bit more responsibly, about a quarter cup of fresh cilantro, and a generous sprinkle of kosher salt to taste. Then we're going to go ahead and pulse and blend this together until it is a relatively smooth but still chunky salsa verde. You can go ahead and chill this out until ready to use, but like the other salsas, make sure that it is at room temperature before you serve it. After all, no one likes a chili burrito. Next up, a super simple Salsa Roja. Pretty much the same procedure, but with 5 or 6 Roma tomatoes, or the tomatoes of your choice, half a small onion cut into quarters, 1 small jalapeno that you can broil or not, but this time we're also going to add a couple cloves of fresh garlic. Drizzle and toss everybody with a little bit of oil, broil for 3 to 5 minutes until we got some nice color, and then once again we are headed into the blender or food processor to homogenize. Once again we are adding the juice of 2 limes, a handful of cilantro, and some salt, as they say, to taste. Blend until relatively smooth but chunky, and there you have it, Salsa Roja. Pretty much just pico de gallo that you could drink with a straw if you tried really hard. Likewise, cover it up and keep it cold until you're ready to use it, but bring it to room temperature before you serve. Last but most assuredly not least is a simple guacamole, which we've made 5 or 6,000 times on this show, so I'm just going to kind of breeze through it. Harvest the flesh of 5 or 6 guacamole eggs, aka avocados. Add half a small finely chopped red onion, 3 or 4 cloves of crushed and chopped garlic, the juice of 2 extra juicy limes, 1 jalapeno jalapeno veins, stems, and seeds removed, finely chopped, and of course a generous helping of the devil's lettuce, about a half cup of chopped cilantro, making it official that I'm not going to be able to eat virtually any aspect of this burrito. Season to taste with kosher salt and freshly ground black pepper. Give it the traditional mash together via fork to your desired consistency, and there you have it, as classic and beautiful as ever there was a guacamole, which we're going to fridge by pressing plastic wrap directly down onto the surface of the guacamole to prevent discoloration. Next and last, it's time to talk about the starch for our burrito, the Cali-style version of which famously uses French fries instead of rice or beans. Now, of course, you can go out and just buy some French fries from your local French fry retailer, but if you want to make your own, here's how I like to do it. Starting with 4 or 5 large Yukon Gold potatoes that I'm going to slice into French fry-like shapes, somewhere halfway between shoestring and fish and chips, so just kind of average sized. Then we're bringing these to a boil in about 2 quarts of heavily salted water with a little spike of vinegar, about a tablespoon. This is going to help the fries retain their shape while they cook, because we want these fries to be thoroughly par-cooked, about 8 to 10 minutes until they're almost falling apart. Then we're removing them, spreading them out on a rimmed baking sheet, and allowing them to cool completely before beginning the frying process, which we're going to do in batches in some 375-degree Fahrenheit oil, frying for 3 to 5 minutes until golden brown and crisp. We're moving on to some paper towels set in a rimmed baking sheet where they're going to drain and get heavily salted while still warm so that the salt adheres. Now, if you're making these in advance of assembling your burrito, obviously they're not going to stay hot, so you can either refry them or toss them into a convection oven or air fryer for a few minutes before serving to crisp them up. Now finally, we can discuss the man of the hour, the tortilla. For Cali-style burritos, you need big tortillas, which are dastardly difficult to make at home, so you're best off just going to your favorite taco shop and begging them to sell you some, which they generally will, especially if you're a grown man and you start to cry. Once you've procured your burrito wrappers by any means necessary, we're going to toast them up on each side in a dry, ripping hot cast iron skillet for about 1 to 2 minutes per side until they're just starting to brown and bubble, and then we're going to keep them warm, stacked together and wrapped up in a clean kitchen towel, which should keep them nice and pliable. Once everybody's been toasted, we're adding some oil to our ripping hot skillet and starting to drop in our steak. Try to shake off as much of the excess marinade as possible and fry up in batches so as to not overcrowd the steak, so we can make sure that we get some nice browning on the exterior. Once your steak has a nice crust on the outside but still lovely and pink in the middle, we can remove and at long last begin assembly. I'm going to start by chopping up the steak a little bit more into even further bite-sized pieces, and then into the lower third quadrant of the tortilla I'm laying down a base of guacamole, followed by a generous sub-level of sour cream. Then I'm adding a few handfuls of my freshly crisped French fries, then of course our steak, and finally a generous helping of Monterey Jack cheese. And now for the tricky bit, the rolling. Our objective here is basically to tuck in the sides of the burrito first, then start rolling from the bottom up, taking care to keep the sides of the tortilla tucked in flush with the width of the burrito, which should in theory yield a self-contained handheld lunch or munchie solution, which is ready to be toasted one last time. It's both going to make sure that everything's hot and that the cheese is melted, and also seal the burrito shut. Once this process is complete, it's ready to slice in half and serve with our salsas. Now, as I mentioned before, there's a whole lot of cilantro in this burrito, so I need to call upon my official burrito taste tester, Jess, whose love of cilantro and having lived in California for 4 years makes her an ideal candidate, and I'm happy to say that the thing passed with flying colors. Her only and extremely valid complaint being that I didn't toast the burrito long enough so that the cheese didn't melt properly. So both for the sake of her taste buds and for the thumbnail for this video, I whipped up another one, really gave it the business on the skillet, and finally got that burrito cross-section of my dreams, which Jess proceeded to aggressively taste test. Today's episode was sponsored by Cheez-It Snapped. Thin, crispy, and cheesy, Cheez-It Snapped pair well with any kind of sandwich, and the Cheez-It Snapped cheddar, sour cream, and onion flavor pairs especially well with the turkey ruth I made for my episode of What's for Lunch. Head over to the Cheez-It YouTube channel now to see how Jess and I took our lunch to the next level. The link is in the video description.